The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and life. But what happens when something emerges that exists outside that ancient connection, a force of nature so primal, so fundamentally destructive, that even the dark and light must pause to witness its arrival? The oceanic world of Mon Gazza had never mattered to anyone. A forgotten sphere of endless water in the outer rim, cataloged by Republic scouts centuries ago and dismissed as worthless. No dilithium, no cities, just storms and depths that scanners couldn't penetrate. The perfect place for the Empire's experimental weapons division to conduct tests far from prying eyes. Grand Moff Wilhuff Tarkin stood aboard the bridge of the Star Destroyer Sovereign, hands clasped behind his back, watching the planet's blue-green surface through the viewport. Around him, technicians monitored readouts from the experimental hyperspace disruptor array, a weapon designed to tear enemy ships out of light speed mid-jump. If successful, it would render Rebel hit-and-run tactics obsolete. "Firing sequence initiated," reported Commander Voss. "Target coordinates locked on planetary core. Hyperspace destabilization in 3, 2, 1. The weapon fired. Not a visible beam, but a ripple, a distortion in the fabric of space itself that made the stars shimmer like heat waves. The effect struck Mon Gazza's northern hemisphere, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ocean exploded. A column of water rose 3,000 feet into the atmosphere, glowing with an eerie blue-white light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Alarms screamed across the Sovereign's bridge. Radiation detectors spiked into the red. Energy signatures unlike anything in Imperial databases flooded the sensors. "What, in the Emperor's name?" Tarkin began. The water column collapsed, crashing back to the surface in massive waves. But something remained. Something massive. Something that hadn't existed in this universe 30 seconds ago. Godzilla rose from the depths. 350 feet of prehistoric fury breached the surface, water cascading off dorsal plates that crackled with residual atomic energy. His roar shattered the tranquil silence of Mon Gazza, a sound of rage and confusion that echoed across sensor arrays for 100,000 kilometers. The creature's eyes, ancient and aware, swept across the alien sky and locked on to the Imperial ships in orbit. On the bridge, every officer stood frozen. This wasn't in any tactical manual. "Get me full analysis," Tarkin commanded, his voice cutting through the shock. "Size, composition, threat assessment, now." The sensor officer's hands trembled over his console. "Sir, the creature registers at 107 meters in height. Mass estimates are unprecedented. Radiation levels are catastrophic, comparable to a ship's reactor breach, but contained within the biological structure. It's not just radioactive, sir. It's generating nuclear energy." "Impossible," Voss muttered. "No biological organism can..." Godzilla's dorsal plates flared blue, lighting up in sequence from tail to head. His jaws opened, and atomic fire erupted, a concentrated beam of superheated radiation that turned a square kilometer of ocean into steam. The display of raw power was unmistakable, a warning. Tarkin's expression didn't change, but his mind raced through possibilities. The Emperor had tasked him with finding weapons to cement Imperial dominance. The Death Star would bring planets to heal through fear. But this creature was something else entirely. A living weapon that could walk through armies, shrug off bombardment, and leave radiation in its wake. "Establish orbital containment," Tarkin ordered. "Deploy TIE squadrons for surveillance. I want every scanner focused on that creature. We will determine if it can be controlled, weaponized, or if it must be eliminated." "Sir, with respect," the sensor officer said carefully. "Our weapons may not be sufficient. The energy output we're reading suggests—" "I did not ask for your concerns, Lieutenant. I gave you an order." Below, Godzilla had begun moving. His massive form cut through the waves with surprising speed, heading towards a chain of volcanic islands on Mon Gazza's equator. Each step sent seismic shockwaves rippling outward. He was searching for food, for territory, for anything familiar in this utterly alien environment. If you want to see more creatures and characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Across the galaxy, on a hidden rebel base on Dantooine, alarms of a different kind were sounding. Mon Mothma stood in the command center, reading the same energy reports that Imperial intelligence had flagged. The rebellion's network of informants had intercepted transmissions from Mon Gazza, fragments of panicked communications, references to a creature, and Tarkin's personal involvement.
"Another Imperial bioweapon?" asked General Yan Dodona, studying the fragmented data. "Perhaps," Mon Mothma replied, "or something they didn't expect. Either way, Tarkin's interest means we should pay attention. If the Empire is mobilizing resources to this world, it represents either a threat or an opportunity." "We barely have ships to spare," Dodona reminded her. "Committing resources to investigate every Imperial movement. Send a reconnaissance team, small, discreet. I want to know what has Tarkin so interested in an empty ocean world." On Mon Gazza, Godzilla had reached the volcanic islands. The heat, the sulfur, the primal energy rising from the planet's core. It called to something in his ancient biology. He had been torn from his world, ripped through dimensions by forces he couldn't comprehend. But this was familiar. Territory, heat, power. He claimed the largest volcanic island as his own, his roar declaring dominion over this new territory. Steam rose from the water where his superheated body met the cooler ocean. His dorsal plates pulsed with a steady rhythm, absorbing the ambient radiation from the volcanic activity, feeding the nuclear furnace within. In orbit, Tarkin watched through the view screen, his calculating mind already formulating plans. The creature was powerful, yes, but the Empire had star destroyers. They had the resources of 1,000 worlds. They had technology that this primitive beast couldn't possibly comprehend. Prepare a bombardment pattern. Turbolasers, full intensity. Target the creature directly. We'll test its limits. Sir, the radiation. If we damage it, the fallout could contaminate the entire planet. The planet is worthless, Tarkin said coldly. The data we gather is not. Fire when ready. The Sovereign's turbolaser batteries rotated, locking on to the massive target below. Green bolts of coherent light lanced down through the atmosphere, each carrying enough energy to vaporize a building. They struck Godzilla directly. The king of monsters staggered, then turned his gaze skyward. The turbolaser fire had hurt, but not in the way the Empire expected. Godzilla's cells absorbed the energy, converted it, fed it into his atomic biology. His dorsal plates began glowing brighter, cycling faster, and then he roared again, not in pain, but in challenge. The battle for Mon Gazza had begun. The bombardment intensified. 6 star destroyers now surrounded Mon Gazza in a carefully calculated orbital pattern, their turbolaser batteries firing in synchronized volleys. The volcanic islands where Godzilla had established his territory disappeared beneath a storm of emerald fire. Each impact sent plumes of vaporized rock and superheated steam into the atmosphere. The ocean itself began to boil. Yet Godzilla remained standing. Tarkin observed from the Sovereign's bridge, his expression carved from stone.
The creature had taken hits that would have reduced a cruiser to debris. It should have been vaporized, or at least driven back into the depths. Instead, the sensors showed something that defied every tactical assumption he'd ever made. "Energy absorption confirmed," the sensor officer reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "The creature is feeding on our weapons fire. Internal temperature rising. Radiation output increasing by 14%. "Cease fire," Tarkin commanded instantly. The turbolaser barrage stopped. Silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the hum of systems and the distant rumbling of Mon Gazza's destabilizing atmosphere. Through the viewport, they watched Godzilla's dorsal plates pulse with brilliant blue light, brighter than before the attack began. The creature's tail swept through the ruins of the volcanic island, sending tsunamis racing across the ocean. His eyes, those ancient, intelligent eyes, fixed on the Star Destroyers above. He recognized them now. Threats, enemies, things that had attacked his territory. Godzilla's jaws opened and atomic breath erupted skyward. The beam of concentrated nuclear energy punched through the atmosphere in seconds, crossing the distance to orbit with terrifying speed. It struck the Star Destroyer Intimidator's shields, and for a moment the barrier held. Then the atomic fire intensified, burning through the energy field like acid through paper. "Evasive maneuvers!" Captain Daveron screamed aboard the Intimidator. The massive wedge-shaped vessel began to turn, its sublight engines flaring. But Star Destroyers weren't built for agility. The atomic breath swept across the hull, melting armor plating, igniting secondary explosions, breaching compartments. Hundreds died in seconds as atmosphere vented into space. "All ships withdraw to high orbit," Tarkin ordered, his voice betraying no emotion despite watching a billion-credit warship crippled by a single creature. "Maintain surveillance. Ready the orbital strike package." The remaining Star Destroyers climbed away from Mon Gazza, leaving the burning Intimidator to limp after them on emergency power. Below, Godzilla watched them retreat, his dorsal plates slowly dimming. He had driven off the threat, for now. But the King of Monsters didn't understand what he'd just done. He'd revealed himself to an empire that controlled thousands of worlds, to military commanders who saw threats as problems requiring overwhelming force, to a regime that could not allow a creature to defy Imperial authority. Tarkin stood before the holographic communicator in his private quarters, the blue-white image of Emperor Palpatine flickering before him. The Emperor's hood shadowed his face, but his eyes glowed with malevolent interest. "Most intriguing, Grand Moff Tarkin," Palpatine said, his voice a serpentine whisper. "A creature immune to our weapons, one that grows stronger from energy itself. Tell me, what do your scientists conclude?" "The creature's biology is unprecedented, my lord. It appears to be a living nuclear reactor, capable of absorbing and redirecting energy in devastating ways. Initial containment protocols have failed. The Intimidator is severely damaged. And yet you do not recommend destruction." It wasn't a question. Palpatine could sense Tarkin's calculations, his strategic mind already working through possibilities. "I recommend study, my lord. If we can understand this creature's biology, weaponize it, we could create an unstoppable force. Imagine entire armies of such creatures loyal to the Empire. Imagine releasing one on a rebellious world. No survivors, no witnesses, only radiation and ruin." The Emperor's laugh was cold and hollow. "You think like a true servant of the Empire, Tarkin? But consider also the risks. Lord Vader is investigating rebel activity in the core systems and cannot be spared. You have conventional forces only. Can you truly contain such a beast?" "With sufficient resources, yes. I request authorization to deploy the prototype AT-AT walkers and experimental containment generators from Karida. We will trap the creature, transport it to a secure research facility, and unlock its secrets."
The transmission ended. Tarkin turned to the viewport, watching Mon Gazza's storms rage below. 1 month to cage a force of nature. He had faced worse odds. Across the galaxy, a small rebel corvette dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Mon Gazza system. Captain Ramus Antilles commanded the vessel, with Princess Leia Organa observing from the bridge. The young senator had insisted on personally investigating the Imperial activity, officially as diplomatic reconnaissance, unofficially because she didn't trust second-hand reports. "Impressive," Leia murmured, studying the tactical display. 6 star destroyers for an uninhabited planet? What are they guarding? Or hunting, Antilles suggested. Sensor sweeps show massive energy signatures on the surface. Radiation levels consistent with a reactor breach, but no debris field. And look here. Damage patterns on that star destroyer. Something hit them. Leia's eyes narrowed. The Empire doesn't damage its own ships. Get us closer, but stay out of sensor range. I want to know what they're so interested in. The corvette crept forward. Passive sensors only, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their approach. As they cleared the planetary shadow, their long-range cameras captured the volcanic islands below and the massive shape moving between them. "By the Force," Antilles whispered. "What is that thing?" Leia stared at the footage of Godzilla wading through the boiling ocean, his dorsal plates glowing with residual atomic energy. The creature was larger than any walker, any beast, any living thing she'd ever seen. And the way it moved, deliberate, intelligent, territorial. "Not what," Leia said quietly. "Who?" That creature fought back against star destroyers and survived. The Empire wants to control it, which means we need to make sure they don't. "But Princess, with respect, that thing is a walking apocalypse. What could we possibly?" "Learn everything we can. If the Empire can't control it with star destroyers, maybe it doesn't want to be controlled at all. Maybe it just wants to be left alone." She watched Godzilla settle onto the largest remaining island, his massive form radiating heat that turned the surrounding ocean to mist. The creature's eyes closed, conserving energy, adapting to this strange new galaxy. Leia didn't know it yet, but she was looking at the only force in the galaxy that neither the Empire nor the Rebellion could truly command. A power beyond politics, beyond the Force itself. On Mon Gazza, Godzilla dreamed of home, of oceans he knew, of territories he'd claimed, of a world where he was king. But those memories were fading, replaced by new instincts, survival, territory, dominance. The galaxy would learn to fear the name the Empire was already giving him, the Atomic Titan. The Imperial Task Force arrived 3 days later. 16 transport ships descended through Mon Gazza's atmosphere, flanked by TIE fighter squadrons and atmospheric gunships. They carried the Empire's response to the impossible. 20 prototype AT-AT walkers, each standing over 20 meters tall, armed with heavy laser cannons and experimental neural disruption arrays. Behind them came the scientists, xenobiologists, weapons specialists, and Imperial engineers tasked with the impossible mission of capturing a living god. Godzilla sensed them coming before they breached the cloud layer. The electromagnetic disturbance of their engines, the ozone smell of repulsor lifts, the rhythmic thunder of mechanical feet hitting volcanic rock. He rose from the ocean depths where he'd been feeding on thermal vents, water cascading off his massive form. His dorsal plates flickered with warning light. The AT-ATs deployed in a wide perimeter around the largest island, their massive feet crushing black sand beneath tons of durasteel and weapon systems. Inside the command walker, Colonel Devad Rest studied holographic displays showing the creature's position 2 kilometers ahead. The atomic titan stood motionless, watching them with those ancient, calculating eyes. "All walkers maintain formation," Rest commanded through the comms. "Advance at 20 meters per minute. Neural disruptors to standby. Remember, Lord Tarkin wants this thing alive if possible." "Sir, respectfully," his gunner interrupted. "That creature destroyed a Star Destroyer's shields. Our armor won't—" "I have my orders, you have yours. Advance!" The AT-ATs began their slow march across the volcanic plain, a mechanical army moving in perfect synchronization. Above them, TIE fighters circled like carrion birds, waiting for the moment to strike. On the beach behind the walkers, containment field generators hummed to life, creating an invisible energy cage designed to trap the creature. Godzilla watched the machines approach. They reminded him of the Mutos he'd fought on Earth, large, armored, aggressive, but these moved with artificial precision, without the organic fluidity of living creatures. They were tools, weapons, extensions of the things in the sky that had attacked his territory. His tail swept through the shallow water, a gesture of territorial aggression. The lead AT-AT fired a warning shot, a crimson laser bolt that struck the sand 50 meters ahead of Godzilla. The atomic glass exploded, showering him with harmless debris. The message was clear: submit or face destruction. Godzilla's response was equally clear. His dorsal plates ignited in rapid sequence, blue light racing from tail to head like a fuse burning toward detonation. His jaws opened, and atomic breath erupted in a concentrated beam that caught the lead AT-AT center mass. The armor held for exactly 2 seconds. Then the superheated radiation melted through durasteel, ignited the power core, and turned the entire vehicle into a fireball. The explosion sent shrapnel raining across the beach, shredding 2 nearby walkers and sending the others scrambling for new positions. "All units, evasive dispersal," Rest screamed as his walker lurched sideways. "Fire at will, neural disruptors maximum intensity." The remaining AT-ATs opened fire, their heavy cannons sending a storm of laser fire toward Godzilla. The neural disruptors activated simultaneously, invisible waves of energy designed to overload nervous systems and render targets unconscious. Against a normal creature, it would have worked instantly. Godzilla wasn't normal. The laser fire washed over him, absorbed into his hide, feeding the nuclear furnace within. The neural disruptors caused him to stagger, his massive head shaking as if clearing fog, but his alien biology, evolved over millions of years to survive atomic testing and worse, adapted within seconds. His roar shook the atmosphere, a sound of pure defiance that shattered the viewports on 3 walkers. He charged. 350 feet of prehistoric fury crossed the distance in seconds, moving with speed that defied his massive size. His tail whipped through an AT-AT's legs, severing them cleanly. The walker toppled, crushing its crew. His claws tore through another, ripping it apart like paper. Atomic breath swept across the beach in a wide arc, turning sand to glass and walkers to slag. From orbit, Princess Leia watched the massacre through the Corvette's long-range sensors.
The Empire's ground force was being annihilated. 16 walkers reduced to burning wreckage in under 4 minutes. She'd seen the Empire's military might crush worlds, but this was different. The creature's holding back, she realized aloud. Captain Antilles looked at her in disbelief. Princess, it just destroyed half of Tarkin's ground force. How is that holding back? It's not pursuing the retreating walkers, not attacking the support ships. It's defending territory, not hunting. Leia leaned closer to the tactical display. It doesn't want conquest. It wants to be left alone. That might be the only thing in the galaxy that shares our philosophy, Antilles muttered. On Mon Gazza, the surviving AT-ATs were in full retreat, limping back toward the transport ships, with Godzilla watching from the ruins of the battlefield. The containment field generators lay shattered, crushed beneath his feet during the charge. The Empire's scientists would get no samples today. Colonel Resser reported the disaster to Tarkin within the hour. The Grand Moff stood on the Sovereign's bridge, hands clasped behind his back, absorbing the failure with characteristic coldness. Unacceptable, Tarkin said simply. Recall all ground forces. Prepare for orbital bombardment. Full yield. If we cannot control the creature, we will sterilize the planet. Sir, the weapons officer hesitated. A full bombardment will render Mon Gazza uninhabitable for centuries. The fallout is irrelevant. This creature has embarrassed the Empire long enough. I will not report another failure to the Emperor. Ready the bombardment. But before the order could be executed, a new signal appeared on sensors. A ship dropping out of hyperspace. Large, fast, and broadcasting Rebel Alliance identification codes. Rebel cruiser entering system, the sensor officer reported. MC-80 class. They're hailing us. Tarkin's eyes narrowed. On-screen, the holographic image resolved into Admiral Raddus, the Mon Calamari commander whose tactical brilliance had frustrated Imperial operations across 3 sectors. His large eyes studied Tarkin with barely concealed contempt. Grand Moff Tarkin, Raddus said, his voice a deep rumble. We've been monitoring your difficulties with the native wildlife. Perhaps the Empire should stick to oppressing sentience instead of waking things better left sleeping. This is Imperial territory, Admiral. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. This is unclaimed Outer Rim territory, and that creature down there has done more damage to your forces in 4 days than we've managed in 4 months. I thought you might appreciate a lesson in humility. Tarkin's finger hovered over the weapons authorization pad. One command would send turbolaser fire toward the Rebel cruiser, but Raddus hadn't come alone. Sensor sweep showed 3 corvettes in flanking positions, all with weapons hot. A standoff. With Godzilla on the planet below, the Empire's forces weakened, and the rebellion watching for any sign of vulnerability. And on his volcanic island, the king of monsters settled back into the water, his dorsal plates dimming as he absorbed the energy from the destroyed walker's power cores. He didn't understand the politics unfolding above him, didn't care about empires or rebellions. He only understood one truth. This was his territory now, and he would defend it against anything that challenged his dominion.
The standoff lasted 18 hours. 2 Imperial Star Destroyers faced off against the Rebel cruiser and its escorts, weapons primed, neither side willing to fire the first shot. Below them, Mon Gazza's storms intensified as Godzilla's radioactive presence destabilized the planet's climate patterns. Lightning arced between clouds charged with ionized particles.
The ocean glowed faintly blue in the darkness. Then, everything changed. A new hyperspace signature materialized at the system's edge, massive, angular, and unmistakably Imperial. The superstar destroyer Executor emerged from lightspeed, its 19 kilometers of armored hull dwarfing every other vessel in the system. On its bridge stood a figure cloaked in black, his mechanical breathing echoing through the command deck. Darth Vader had arrived. "Lord Vader," Tarkin's voice came through the comm with barely concealed surprise. "I was not expecting—" "The Emperor is concerned," Vader interrupted, his deep voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Your reports described a creature immune to conventional weapons, one that grows stronger from energy attacks. The Emperor wishes to see this phenomenon for himself." Tarkin's jaw tightened. Vader's presence meant his time had run out. Success or failure would be measured in the next few hours. "My lord, I was preparing a full orbital bombardment to eliminate the threat." "No," Vader stepped toward the viewport, his cape flowing behind him. "I will handle this creature personally. If it cannot be controlled, it will be destroyed. But the Emperor desires certainty." On the rebel cruiser, Admiral Raddus watched the Executor deploy a single Lambda-class shuttle. "He's going down there," the Mon Calamari commander said with disbelief. "Vader's actually going to confront that thing alone." Princess Leia stood beside him, studying the tactical display. She'd faced Vader once before, felt the crushing weight of his presence in the Force, the cold darkness that radiated from him like a heat furnace. But even Vader had limits. Even the Emperor's enforcer could bleed. "We should leave," she said quietly. "Whatever happens next, we don't want to be caught between Vader and that creature." But Raddus shook his head. "This is too important. If Vader fails, the Empire loses its most feared weapon. If the creature wins, the entire galaxy sees Imperial invincibility shattered. We stay, we watch, we learn." The shuttle descended through Mon Gazza's turbulent atmosphere, buffeted by winds that would have torn lesser craft apart. Vader stood in the passenger compartment, one hand resting on his lightsaber, reaching out through the Force to sense what awaited him below. What he found was nothing. The Force was everywhere, connecting all living things in an invisible web. Vader could sense the pilot's fear, the crew aboard the Star Destroyers in orbit, even the distant presence of the rebel observers. But the creature registered as a void. Not darkness, not light, simply absence, as if it existed outside the Force entirely. Impossible. The shuttle landed on volcanic rock 200 meters from the water's edge. The ramp descended, and Vader strode out into Mon Gazza's toxic atmosphere, his respirator adapting automatically to the radiation-saturated air. Around him, the island bore scars from recent battles, melted walker remains, craters filled with radioactive glass, the acrid smell of destruction. Godzilla emerged from the ocean like a rising mountain. Water streamed from his body as he approached, each footfall sending tremors through the island. His dorsal plates pulsed with dim blue light, reflecting off Vader's polished armor. The Dark Lord ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade casting harsh shadows across the beach. They stood, facing each other, the Emperor's right hand and the King of Monsters, Predator, recognizing Predator.
Vader extended his hand, channeling the Force into a crushing telekinetic grip. He'd used this power to crumple starfighter hulls, to snap necks from across command decks, to choke the life from admirals who'd failed him. He focused that power on Godzilla's throat, seeking to collapse the creature's windpipe. Godzilla's head tilted slightly, feeling pressure, but not understanding its source.
Then, he simply ignored it. His biology, his very existence, operated outside the rules that govern Force-sensitive beings. Vader might as well have been trying to move a planet. The Dark Lord's breathing quickened, not from fear, but from realization. This creature was beyond the Force, beyond his power. So, he would use other methods. Vader thrust his hand forward, and a massive boulder, 10 tons of volcanic rock, ripped free from the island and hurtled toward Godzilla with deadly force. It struck the creature's chest and shattered like glass. Godzilla didn't even flinch. The king of monsters took a step forward, then another. His eyes fixed on this small armored figure that dared challenge him. Recognition stirred in his ancient memory. This one was different from the machines. This one radiated danger. Vader's lightsaber hummed as he raised it in a defensive stance. You cannot win, creature. You face the power of the dark side. You face the Emperor's will. Godzilla's dorsal plates ignited. Vader had 1 second to recognize the threat, 1 second to draw on the Force, to create a barrier of pure dark side energy around himself, 1 second before atomic breath erupted in a concentrated beam that turned the beach into a hellscape. The blast struck Vader's Force barrier and pushed. The Dark Lord's feet carved trenches in the volcanic rock as he was driven backward, channeling every ounce of his power into maintaining the shield. The heat was incredible. His armor's internal systems screamed warnings, coolant systems straining to their limits. The sand around him turned to molten glass. And still, Godzilla's atomic breath continued, relentless as a star's core. Vader's barrier cracked. Darkside energy fractured under pressure no Force user had ever endured. With a roar of mechanical rage, he released the barrier and dove aside, the atomic breath carving a canyon where he'd stood. He rolled to his feet, cape smoldering, armor scorched, and ignited his lightsaber once more. But Godzilla was already moving. His tail swept across the beach with devastating speed. Vader leaped, using the Force to propel himself 40 feet into the air, but the tail caught him mid-flight and sent him crashing into the volcanic rock 300 meters away. The impact would have killed any normal human. Vader's armor crumpled, his respirator stuttered, and warning lights flashed across his chest panel. He struggled to rise, reaching for the Force, finding it harder to grasp through the haze of pain and damaged systems. Godzilla approached slowly, each step an earthquake. He looked down at the broken figure in black armor, seeing no threat now. Just another creature defeated, another challenger to his territory put down. On orbit, Tarkin watched through the shuttle's abandoned cameras. His hands gripped the command rail until his knuckles turned white. "Prepare all batteries," he ordered quietly. "If Lord Vader falls, we burn that entire island to bedrock." On the rebel cruiser, Leia stood in stunned silence. Vader, the Empire's ultimate enforcer, had been defeated, not killed, but broken by a force that didn't care about the dark side or the Emperor's will. Vader raised one hand toward Godzilla, summoning the last reserves of his strength. Lightning crackled from his fingertips. Sith lightning. Channeled through his dying anger and pain, it struck Godzilla's chest and fed his atomic biology. The creature's dorsal plates flared brighter. Vader's hand dropped. But Godzilla didn't deliver the killing blow. He simply turned away, dismissing the fallen Sith Lord as no longer a threat, and waded back into the ocean. His message was clear. This island belonged to him. Any who challenged that claim would meet the same fate. The shuttle returned hastily, medical droids stabilizing Vader's failing systems as they rushed him back to the Executor. Tarkin received no report from the Dark Lord, only the sight of him on a medical slab, armor being cut away to reveal catastrophic damage. The Empire's invincible weapon had been humbled by something that shouldn't exist.
The Emperor's holographic projection towered over Tarkin's kneeling form, blue-white and crackling with barely restrained fury. Around them, the Executor's command bridge was silent, every officer frozen at their stations, terrified of drawing Palpatine's attention. "You have failed me, Grand Moff Tarkin," the Emperor hissed, his voice like acid eating through durasteel. "My apprentice lies in a Bacta tank. My prototype walkers are scrap metal. My empire has been made to look weak before rebel observers who even now spread word of this humiliation." "My lord, the creature is unlike anything we've encountered. Its biology defies—" "Excuses." Lightning crackled around Palpatine's projection. "I tasked you with capturing or destroying a single beast. Instead, you have created a legend. Already, the Outer Rim whispers of a creature the Empire cannot control. Do you understand what this means?" Tarkin kept his eyes lowered. "Yes, my lord." "No, you do not." Palpatine leaned forward, his face a mask of malevolent calculation. "The Death Star will be operational within the year. When it fires upon Alderaan, the galaxy will tremble and submit. But if they believe there exists something we cannot destroy, they will resist. They will hope. And hope is the enemy of order." "What are your orders, my lord?" "You will eliminate this creature using every resource at your disposal. You have 48 hours. If you fail, I will send Lord Vader once he recovers to finish what you could not. And then I will find a Grand Moff who can follow orders." The transmission ended. Tarkin rose slowly, his mind already racing through scenarios. Conventional weapons fed the creature's power. Ground forces were useless. Vader himself had been defeated. That left only one option, one he'd been reluctant to deploy due to its experimental nature. "Prepare the seismic destabilizers," Tarkin commanded. "We will turn the planet itself against the creature." On Mon Gazza, Godzilla rested in the deep thermal vents, absorbing geothermal energy to replenish what he'd expended fighting the armored figure. His atomic biology hummed with contentment. He'd defended his territory, proven his dominance, sent the threats fleeing. By the ancient rules that governed his existence, he'd won. But he didn't understand the galaxy he now inhabited, didn't comprehend that his very existence had become a political crisis that would demand resolution regardless of the cost. Princess Leia stood in the rebel cruiser's conference room, surrounded by holographic displays showing Mon Gazza from every angle. Admiral Rodas, Captain Antilles, and 3 rebel intelligence officers studied the Imperial fleet movements with growing concern. They're positioning seismic charges around the planet's tectonic weak points. If they detonate simultaneously, they'll trigger a planetary core destabilization. Mon Gazza will tear itself apart. That will kill the creature and destroy the entire planet in the process, Leia said quietly. Typical Imperial overkill. They can't control it, so they'll eliminate it along with everything else, Rodas growled. Leia watched the holographic image of Godzilla moving through Mon Gazza's depths, unaware of the weapons being positioned around his adopted home. She thought of Alderaan, her homeworld, peaceful and beautiful. She thought of what the Empire would do to any world that defied them. "We can't let them destroy the planet," she said suddenly. Every head in the room turned toward her. "Princess, with respect," Antilles began, "that creature is a walking apocalypse. It destroyed an Imperial ground force. It defeated Darth Vader. What makes you think—" It defended itself, Leia interrupted. Every action it's taken has been defensive. The Empire attacked first, tried to capture it, sent Vader to kill it. The creature only responded to threats against its territory. You're suggesting it's sentient? Rodus asked carefully. I'm suggesting it's intelligent, and that intelligence is the only thing that's hurt the Empire in this sector in months. Leia straightened, her voice taking on the commanding tone of a senator. If we let Tarkin destroy it, we lose a potential ally. If we can communicate with it, move it, relocate it somewhere away from Imperial space, you'll want to recruit a prehistoric monster to the rebellion, the intelligence officer said flatly. I want to deny the Empire the satisfaction of destroying something they can't control. And maybe, just maybe, save an innocent creature that's only trying to survive in a galaxy it doesn't understand. The room fell silent. Then Radis's eyes glinted with something approaching respect. What's your plan, Princess? 12 hours later, a small rebel shuttle descended through Mon Gazza's atmosphere. Leia piloted it herself, ignoring the protests of her security team. The shuttle carried no weapons, broadcast no threats, only a simple message on all frequencies in every language the rebel had records of. Peace, no harm, safe passage.
Godzilla sensed the small craft approaching and surfaced to investigate. This one was different from the others, smaller, slower, projecting no aggressive intent. His dorsal plates remained dim as the shuttle landed on the beach where he'd fought Vader. Leia descended the ramp alone, her white senatorial robes billowing in the radioactive wind. She'd left her blaster aboard the ship. Whatever happened next would require trust, not weapons. Godzilla regarded her with those ancient eyes. She was tiny compared to him, insignificant, barely worth noticing. Yet she stood without fear, hands open and empty. Leia reached out through the Force, seeking any connection, any way to communicate. She found nothing. The creature existed outside her understanding. But perhaps words weren't necessary. She pressed a control on her wrist communicator, and a holographic projection appeared above her palm. It showed Mon Gazza from orbit, then Imperial ships positioning charges, then a simulation of the planet breaking apart. She pointed to the hologram, then to the sky, then to Godzilla himself. Danger, death, escape. For a long moment, Godzilla simply stared. Then his head turned toward the ocean, toward the volcanic vents that had become his refuge. This was his territory, his home. No one drove him from his territory. His roar shook the atmosphere, a sound of absolute refusal. Leia understood. You won't leave, she whispered. You'll fight them to the end. Above, Tarkin gave the order. Detonate the seismic charges. Destroy the planet. 8 massive explosions erupted along Mon Gazza's tectonic lines. The planet's crust fractured, magma geysers erupting into the sky. The ocean began to drain into widening fissures. Earthquakes measuring 9.0 and higher rippled across the surface, and Godzilla felt his world dying beneath him. His dorsal plates ignited with fury beyond anything he'd shown before. This wasn't an attack on him. This was an attack on his territory itself. They were destroying his home. The rage that filled him was primal, absolute, older than civilization. He charged into the water, diving deep, his atomic biology flaring as he absorbed every ounce of thermal energy from the planet's dying core. The radiation levels spiked so dramatically that every sensor in orbit screamed warnings. Godzilla's body became a living furnace, storing energy, preparing for one final devastating response. Leia ran for her shuttle, the ground collapsing beneath her feet. "Get us out of here!" she screamed into her comm. Godzilla surfaced one last time as Mon Gazza came apart around him. His dorsal plates burned like blue suns. His jaws opened, and atomic breath unlike anything he'd produced before erupted skyward. Not a beam, but a column of nuclear fire that punched through the atmosphere and struck the Sovereign directly. Tarkin had 1 second to see death approaching. Then his flagship's shields failed, armor vaporized, and the reactor core went critical. The explosion lit up Mon Gazza's dying sky like a second sun. Godzilla's roar echoed across the collapsing planet. Triumph and fury and loss all combined. He'd destroyed his enemy. But his territory was gone, consumed by the weapons they'd deployed. As Mon Gazza's surface broke apart, Godzilla dove into the deepest remaining ocean trench, his body radiating so much heat that the water around him turned to steam. He would survive. He always survived. But this galaxy had taken something from him that could never be replaced. In orbit, the rebel cruiser watched the planet die and the Sovereign burn. Princess Leia stood at the viewport, tears streaming down her face. He defended it to the end, and they destroyed everything rather than let him win. The sensors showed one final reading before Mon Gazza's core imploded. A massive radioactive signature diving deep, heading toward the planet's unstable center. Then the planet collapsed into itself, and the signal vanished. The Imperial fleet withdrew. The rebels followed, and the galaxy marked Mon Gazza as another cautionary tale. The world where even Darth Vader fell, and where something beyond the Force made the Empire bleed.
The official Imperial report listed Mon Gazza as a failed terraforming experiment, its destruction attributed to unforeseen seismic instability. Grand Moff Tarkin's death was recorded as a tragic accident during a routine inspection tour. The truth was classified at the highest levels, accessible only to the Emperor himself and a handful of senior officers who would carry the secret to their graves. But secrets have a way of spreading in a galaxy connected by hyperspace lanes and cantina gossip. Within weeks, smugglers whispered of a creature that had fought Darth Vader to a standstill. Outer Rim colonists spoke of the atomic titan, a force of nature that even the Empire's might couldn't contain. Rebel recruiters found their job easier. If the Empire could be humbled by a single creature, perhaps their stranglehold on the galaxy wasn't as absolute as they claimed. Hope, that dangerous ember, spread across 1,000 worlds. Princess Leia filed her own classified report for the Rebel Alliance. In it, she argued that Mon Gazza represented something profound, proof that the Empire's power had limits, that their doctrine of fear through overwhelming force could be challenged by something they couldn't predict or control. She recommended that the Alliance seek out other anomalies, other forces that existed outside Imperial understanding, and use them to shatter the illusion of invincibility. But at night, alone in her quarters, Leia thought about the creature she'd seen defending its territory with such primal determination. She wondered if it had survived Mon Gazza's destruction, if, somewhere in the debris field or the collapsing planetary core, Godzilla still lived. The sensors had lost him in the final moments, but absence of evidence wasn't evidence of absence. In the Emperor's throne room on Coruscant, Palpatine sat in darkness, his yellow eyes reflecting the city lights beyond the viewports. Darth Vader knelt before him,
his armor repaired, but his pride still wounded. The Dark Lord had not spoken of his defeat. His silence was admission enough. "The creature is gone," Palpatine said quietly, his voice devoid of its usual venom. And with it a question I had not anticipated. What else exists beyond the Force? What other powers might challenge our dominion? "The Death Star will eliminate such concerns, my master," Vader replied, his mechanical voice steady despite the doubt that gnawed at him. He had felt true helplessness on that volcanic beach, the realization that all his power, all his mastery of the dark side, meant nothing against something that existed outside its laws. "Perhaps," Palpatine mused, "or perhaps we have only glimpsed the first of many challenges to come. The galaxy is vast, Lord Vader, infinite in its capacity for surprise." Across the galaxy, in the debris field that had once been Mon Gazza, something stirred. Deep within a massive chunk of planetary core that drifted through the void, insulated by layers of cooling magma and radioactive shielding, a heartbeat pulsed. Slow, steady, patient. Godzilla slept in the silence of space, his atomic biology entering a state of hibernation to conserve energy and heal from catastrophic damage. His dorsal plates flickered weakly with residual power, drawing sustenance from the radiation-saturated rock surrounding him. He dreamed of territories lost and battles won, of a home he could never return to, and a galaxy that had rejected his claim to dominance. But the King of Monsters was nothing if not adaptable. He had survived atomic bombs, ancient rivals, and the depths of Earth's oceans. He had crossed dimensions and emerged in a galaxy governed by strange energies and stranger beings. He had fought the Empire's greatest weapon and lived to tell the tale, or would, once he awakened. The debris field drifted on solar winds, carried by the gravitational currents of nearby star systems. In a month, it would pass through a shipping lane. In a year, it might be captured by a planet's gravity well. In a decade, scavengers might break it apart for valuable minerals. And when they did, they would discover that some forces of nature cannot be contained, controlled, or killed. They can only be survived. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson on Mon Gazza. There were powers beyond the Force, beyond the Empire, beyond the comprehension of Jedi or Sith. Powers that answered to no one, bowed to no authority, and could not be bargained with or intimidated. In the end, the Empire had destroyed an entire planet to eliminate a single threat. They called it victory, but as word spread through the Outer Rim, as cantinas filled with stories of the creature that made Vader bleed, as hope kindled in the hearts of the oppressed, the question remained unanswered. What happens when the King of Monsters wakes up? The Force binds all living things, but Godzilla proved he existed beyond its reach. And in a galaxy about to be torn apart by civil war, by the clash between light and darkness, the atomic titan represented something else entirely. Nature itself, red in tooth and claw, indifferent to the petty struggles of civilizations that believed themselves masters of the universe. The Empire would build its Death Star. The rebellion would strike from the shadows. The Force would guide both sides towards inevitable conflict. But somewhere in the cold void of space, wrapped in radioactive stone and ancient fury, Godzilla dreamed. And when he awakened, if he awakened, the galaxy would learn that some legends refuse to die.